For those of you who have just joined us, this meeting will be recorded, and Charity has started the recording. We will post this to our website within the next couple of days. So if you want to look at it at a later date or have any other colleagues look at it, it will be posted on our website. We did have a session last week, and that was for our new contract providers or contractors. I call them providers, so my apologies. That recording is also posted on our website. At this time, before we start, I would like to have the OPDC staff that are on our call today to introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with Maddie. And then Maddie, if you'll just call out someone else to introduce themselves, that would be great.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Maddie Ferrando, and I'm one of the senior research analysts here. Adrian?
Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian Manriquez, and I am also one of the senior research analysts here. Charity?
Hello, I'm Charity, and I am a quality assurance data analyst. Alina?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alina Haynes. I'm one of the program analysts, and I oversee the Portland Metro jurisdictions, so Washington, Multnomah, and Clackamas counties. Oh, Adelina.
Hi, I'm Adelina Hernandez. I am one of the program analysts. My jurisdictions are mainly like the Willamette Valley. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Doak. I am a program analyst as well, and I have Eastern Oregon, Southern Oregon, some of the coast, and then the statewide contracts.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining. And so today we're going to go over just a quick overview of the caseload reporting and some recent changes on our web page for the caseload reporting page, as well as some of the upcoming changes with caseload validation and one new caseload field on the report, and then as well as some of the required forms and the MAC utilization calculator. So first, I'm going to start with a quick overview of the web page. And so I did just want to point out that our office hours that we had last Thursday, and that is already, the recording is already posted to our website, goes into more detail on actually how to submit a caseload report. So if you do happen to be a new contract provider joining us here today, just it might be beneficial for you to go and watch at least the beginning portion of that recording, because it will provide a little bit more detail. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So I'm sure many of you have all seen our lovely website, and our caseload reporting page is found underneath the provider tab, caseload reporting. And then this used to just be for the reporting period of 2023 through this prior September, but that is now in its own little window down here. So if for some reason you needed to submit a report from the previous contract cycle, you could do that in this section. But this is the new section for the current contract period that we're in. It's the same banners for criminal and juvenile, and then the separate one for PCRP. There are some new resource documents here. The troubleshooting guide, I would encourage you to check that one out if you haven't already. It provides some of the, if you receive an unsuccessful caseload report submission, this guide will kind of help point out some reasons why you might be getting an error and some tips on how to fix it. And then, as always, we have the case type and disposition codes that are allowed for each contract. And then there is a link to the new caseload calculator that Megan is going to go over for us later. And so I did want to point out on the criminal contracts, there are two new case type codes for this contract reporting period. And they are for post-conviction relief of murder cases and post-conviction relief of Jessica's Law. So previously there was just one for cases other than murder, and then an aggravated murder code. So these are your two new PCR case codes for murder and J-law. So those are new ones that will be accepted in the validation. And then I did want to also remind everyone that the caseload reports are now due on the 15th of the following month. So your first report for this cycle will be due on November 15th instead of the 20th as they were previously. And then if you are unaware, we also have a dashboard on our website that allows you to see what your cases are and your utilization. And so that's also a good way to check to see if we've received your report or not. So under general and data and reporting, and then under OPDC dashboards, currently there's only the one for the prior contract period, but we will be posting a new one shortly once we get closer to the reporting deadline for these new contracts. And just a reminder, that dashboard currently updates every Monday at 10 a.m. and then also on it'll be on the 15th, so the day the reports are due, and then the following day to make sure anyone who submitted late also gets reflected in the dashboard. Right. And then, so I did want to briefly mention so there is one change to the caseload reporting template this year. So there's going to be a new column, and it's going to be for an investigator number. So and this is only applicable for contracts who have in-house investigators funded within their contract. So if you're requesting a PAE for an investigator, this does not apply to that. It's specifically to the in-house investigators. And so the new column will be, it's titled investigator number, and then in that column, you'll provide on the row, if an investigator is working on a case, you'll provide their investigator number. And so the investigator number, if your investigator has a DPSST license, they'll use that number it's going to be with the letter D in front of it. So the D plus their 6-digit DPSST number. And if they don't have one of those, then our system is going to auto-generate a sort of temporary investigator number for those investigators to use. And so just make sure you reach out to your program analyst if you have any questions about what the investigator number is that you should be using. And our intention for that field is in the months that an investigator is working on that case, you would provide the investigator number. So if they only work on the case for 2 months out of the 4 months that the case is open, you would only stick their number on the report for the months where they are working on that case. And while that field itself, so on each row is not a required field, that column is. So if you have a report template saved previously, you're going to want to either go to our website and download the template again because it will have that new column on there, or make sure that you add the correct column name for the new investigator column to your existing file. Because if that column does not exist in the template or in your report, when you go to submit the file, you will get a rejection because there's not the correct number of columns in the report.
Hey, Maddie.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question in the chat, and I think this is probably for one of the program analysts. So it says, will in-house investigators eventually have to have a license?
Yes, it's part of the it's part of the qualification standards that start in February, that investigators will need to be licensed, all investigators under contract.
All right, and then I did just want to highlight a few reminders regarding the caseload reports. So first, one thing is that special characters are not allowed in the file name. So if you have an exclamation point in your file name when you submit your report, not only will we not be able to receive that report, you will not get an error email. The system kind of doesn't really know how to process the special characters. So if you don't receive an email, make sure you check to see if there is a special character in your file name. Because otherwise, when you submit a report, you should receive an email within 5 to 10 minutes. If it's not in your junk or spam, then please reach out to the caseload reporting email box so that we can make sure we can figure out what was happening with your report. As always, that's always been, any submission will overwrite an existing submission for that month. So if you had previously submitted your October report, but you realized, oh, you forgot a few things, you could resubmit that report and it will overwrite that existing October report. And that's the same goes for if you needed to submit a partial report because you had attorneys wanting to go hourly, or for some reason you could submit for just a few attorneys, and then a few weeks later you could submit for your whole contract and it will overwrite that existing report.
We have another question in the chat really quick, and I think this is probably for the PAs again. Will we still file a separate report for our in-house investigators like we currently do?
Is the question about case managers in a separate report for in-house case managers, or I'm not familiar with the report that's filed for in-house investigators. Let me see who asked this question. Beth. Yes, you would still, the reporting changes only for investigators, so you would continue to do the reporting that you're doing for case managers.
And then Maddie, could you also quickly go over again where the new CSV template, the updated template is?
Yes, so on our website, it is within, under the caseload reporting, it is within these list of resources. So this caseload reporting link right here, that will prompt the CSV file to open if you open that, and you can save and download that. And one more thing I will note is this change is only for criminal and juvenile contractors. It is not for PCRP.
Maddie, did you mention that they can add the investigator to the report at any time? So it doesn't have to be like they can add it. They don't have to add it the month that they received the case. They would just add it when they put the investigator on the case, and then remove it once the investigator is no longer working on the case.
Yep. Our intention is to just have you report it when for the months that the investigator was working on the case. All right, so now I'm going to pass it over to Adrian to talk about a few more changes within the caseload. Oh, or Alina can go first.
Looks like Alina has something.
I was just on the vein of this office hours being focused on criminal and juvenile non-PCRP. We have now scheduled a future office hours to focus on PCRP caseload reporting. I'm not sure if we missed announcing that at the beginning of this, but I just wanted to highlight that is posted in the future and on our in the same area of our website if we have any PCRP providers on with us today.
Thank you, Alina. I will, I'll just throw the date out. It is Monday, November 17th at 1 p.m. And we will be sending out a save the date announcement with that, and then an agenda and the Teams link to follow after that. Thank you.
Okay, let me share my screen real quick. So I will be talking about some additional caseload validation roles that we have implemented. So for criminal, juvenile, and PCRP caseload submissions, special characters in the case numbers field column are no longer allowed. The only character that is allowed will be a dash. And the only case number that should have a dash is pre-petition or older juvenile cases that already have dashes in place. And case numbers are now limited to 15 characters. Now, speaking of additional validation rules specifically for criminal and juvenile only, the date entered into appointment date, the appointment date field cannot be before 01/01/2000. So January 1st of the year 2000. And then for investigator numbers entered into the investigator number field must match the investigator number we have set in our database. So if you're not sure about the assigned investigator's number, please reach out to your program analyst to get one before you submit your caseload report. Additionally, if there is a newly hired investigator, you would need to notify OPDC so we could set the new investigator up in our database. However, I believe this is only for contractors that have funded investigators. You do not need to report an investigator if they are not under your contract. And that's what I have to share about validation.
This is Alina. I wanted to just mention the investigator, and I'm sorry if we've already discussed this and I missed it, but the investigator number is the DPSST number. If you have approved in-house investigator funded under your contract, you likely were asked by your PA or your analyst when we were putting contracts together for that DPSST number. If your investigator does not currently have that, that's all right. These actually doesn't go into effect until February when the new standards are implemented. OPDC will be issuing a sort of a temporary DPSST number. So we will, if you have questions about that, again, reach out to your analyst. But if you were wondering what that number is, it is many of the investigators, if with contractors, have that number already. And I had a quick question, and I'm getting familiar with this system as well, but does there need to be a letter before the DPSST number in order to report it in the system?
Yeah, so I had mentioned if you have the DPSST number, it'll be a letter D as in dog, and then your 6-digit DPSST number.
Great. I'm kind of conflating. I'm trying to recall what we've discussed today and also what we went over very similar content last week with our newer providers. So thank you.
All right, and now I think Megan is going to talk about some forms in the calculator.
Yay. Yes, I am. And I will warn you all, I have a cold and it's just affecting my throat. So lucky. We'll see how that goes. So let's see. Let me pull up the forms. Every time I expect to share the wrong thing, but look at me. I'm batting 100. Okay, so we have several forms on our website. They can be found in a couple different places. You can find them on the reporting page if you go under provider and then you go under the caseload reporting. Many of the forms are here linked at the bottom. The only one missing from here that we will go over today is the co-counsel form, but otherwise you can access them here. You can also access the calculator that I'm going to go over in a minute, but you can also go to the forms page and find the forms there as well. So the required
Hey,
forms,
Megan.
Yeah.
Sorry. If you refresh the site, we actually also
did you add it down there?
Linked, yes, it's all forms are now on the caseload reporting page as well. Sorry.
Awesome. I won't refresh because I don't know what that will do, Charity, but anybody who goes on there now, the forms are on there in 2 places. So that's awesome. So then if you go to the forms page, you can access under the required forms, the vacancy and shutoff forms. These are referenced in the contract under Exhibit E. And then special request forms is where you'll find the co-counsel and the extraordinary case circumstances form, also called ECC. So we will start with the attorney shutoff form. When you access this form, everyone on this call would be a contract. So you would click contract, and then you will find your contract in the list, and it will automatically populate the ID number and the administrator information. And then you would select either individual or complete contract shutoff. Our feeling from the contract, the way we interpret the contract under Exhibit E is contractor only needs to provide notice to us when the contractor, so the whole entity, is unable to accept appointments. So if, let's say you have an entity of 10 people and one person reaches their numbers for the month, you do not need to submit a shutoff notice until the entire entity can no longer provide services in the jurisdiction. However, if you do have an attorney who has reached their, who is shutting off for the month, but wants to take cases hourly, then you would need to do an individual attorney shutoff. And you can submit for just that. When you submit a shutoff, it's going to ask for a start and end date of that shutoff, and then it's going to ask for the reason why. These align with the contract. So either reached monthly MAC, reached ethical capacity, events. If you click events, it lists out the events that are in the contract. And then there is the event of a disciplinary action or criminal charges. If you select the reached monthly MAC, it is going to ask you if you've submitted your caseload report. If you can say no, but it will prompt you to submit your report within 5 days in order for us to confirm the shutoff. If you are submitting for an individual attorney, Maddie kind of touched on this a little bit, you can submit a report for just that attorney, submit it, then we'll be able to see what their MAC is, be able to confirm if they, if you had a second attorney shut off, you could submit the report with the two attorneys if they both are wanting to take hourly. If no one wants to take hourly, then you don't need to submit the report until everybody has reached their numbers and you are shutting off for the entire month. I feel like there was something else I was going to say about this. Oh, the contract does say that if you shut off cases, you still are expected to leave capacity to take new cases with existing clients or any cases that come back. I also would note that the contract says that it is up to the contractor to determine what they take every month and to ensure that they spread out their MAC relatively evenly over the contract. So they can shut off at the point they feel they need to shut off to achieve that. However, if an attorney wants to take cases hourly, they would have to show that they've met 100% of their MAC through that month, right? Based on what they're contracted for. Adelina?
Just because I had this question come up and I did check with Adrian that if you select no, that you haven't submitted your caseload reporting, it is not going to let you submit the form.
That's good to know. Okay. In that case, then it's wanting you to have submitted your caseload report prior to submitting the form. The problem is, as everyone knows, we are behind, right? So we don't know where people are at unless they submit their caseload information so we can confirm where they're at with stuff. The other form for us to go through is the vacancy form. So the previous version of this form for the last contract cycle did not include support staff that's funded under the contract. So this one, you can, if you have a investigator leave the contract, or if you happen to have someone funded through HB 4002, either a case manager or a paralegal, you would use this form as well. you can choose either attorney or other staff. And then you would do, if it's an attorney, you can look up, right, who they are. Other staff, you would put in this information and put in the notice date and the separation date. And then you can delineate whether they're investigator or a paralegal case manager. And other than that, there isn't much change to this form. Yeah, there isn't much change. Really, the real change to this one is that it now captures support staff as well. A notice is sent to your program analyst when you submit one of these forms, but I always tell people it's good to also just let us know in case we miss it or something. The other form we'll go through is the extraordinary case circumstances form. Most of you probably are familiar with this. This form is for cases where you feel that the case is extraordinary. It is not a typical case of its case type. It's requiring more work, or there is something about it that makes it, it should be considered as a heavier case weight than what the typical case of its case type is. So you can go onto our website, fill out this form. You would put in the attorney who's appointed information, the client's information. Here, the attorney and the client are the same person. And then you would put in if there were any additional cases. If they are, you can go ahead and put what those cases are, and then what the case type codes are, and an estimated number of hours. So that's a good thing to be prepared that it's going to ask you, and it is a required field, what the estimated number of hours spent on the case are. Another thing to note is that this form cannot be submitted until you've had the case for at least 30 days and has to be submitted within 30 days of final disposition on the case. We ask for attorneys to wait 30 days to submit so that they have time to receive discovery, meet with the client, really assess the case and whether it's extraordinary or not, or they are getting the impression that it will be and can provide us some information. Then this is the part, it's a very simple form for the most part. It shouldn't take too long. You would identify the issue. You can submit select as many as you want that apply, and then has a judgment been entered, and then a short explanation and submit. These are reviewed by Resource Counsel in Trial Support and Development, and I believe they do that once a month. I'm not sure of I don't know if there's an exact day every month. I think it's towards the end of every month that they review these. So if you submitted one at the beginning of a month, then that might be why it's taking a little while to get a response on your submission. The co-counsel request form is new. Also, we are asking that this form is submitted for any case where co-counsel is being requested, even if it's mandatory. This form mostly goes through the attorney's information, the lead attorney's information, the client's information, co-counsel information, and it is also reviewed by Resource Counsel, Trial Support and Development. I don't know what the timeline is to review this form, but I would imagine it's a much shorter turnaround than the review on the extraordinary case circumstances forms. And this can be found on our website as well. Okay. Last time I went a little over, so I'm trying to not do that this time. So I'm going to switch over to the mixed caseload calculator. Many of you are probably familiar with this calculator because we did have a similar version for the last contract cycle. We have made a few changes to the template this time around, and a lot of those changes are in the instructions, but we also added some new details for SPPE and attorneys in the reduced caseload program. Let's see, where do I want to start? I guess where I'll start is that we last week were working on these and kind of realized that this entity page, which basically rolls up all the attorneys' numbers into one entity, like whole entity view, might be better served to contractors if it displayed each attorney's MAC utilization instead of before it just showed what they had picked up in case weight, but not in comparison to anything else, right? So it was just like what they had picked up, but it didn't tell you whether that was over or under where they needed to be. So we did adjust our template to include the utilization percentages for each attorney. That way, if you're using this as a tool to assign cases or to monitor your case assignments, you could see that one attorney maybe is, you know, at 50%, while another attorney is at 100% or whatever, and adjust accordingly. If you received a copy of the calculator that does not have that utilization view on the entity roll-up, you can either go to our website where we have the template, and it does have that included in that template, or you can reach out to your analyst and let them know that you would like to have that adjustment made. It's not a difficult adjustment to make, but it is something that we're happy to do for you if you want. The calculator is, I think before we had like pink and green. Now we just went to a blue and a green because it felt less harsh. And so the green is for criminal and the blue is for juvenile. And then you would have each attorney's utilization in your entity, and then the box below would be the whole entity's view. So this row here, 43, would tell you the whole entity's utilization as a whole, rolling up everybody. And then 54 would do juvenile whole entity utilization for each month. All right. You'll see, and this is new for some people, we didn't have the utilization percentage on the calculator. We did have it kind of here and there on previous versions, but it is something that will be on every version moving forward. The way that this works is you'll see that this attorney or individual took so many cases that they're at 227% of their MAC, prorated MAC for the month of October. Then you'll see that the number slowly declines each month. What it's essentially saying is if you took no cases in November, then you'd be at 113%. If you took none in December, you'd be at 76%, and so on and so forth. To where in the end, you would end the contract at 13% if you never took another case, right? So it's kind of giving you the utilization all the way out through the end. If you aren't familiar with this calculator, then you may not be familiar with this section here. What this is saying is based on the number of cases taken in October, the attorney should be shut off for 5 weeks starting in the next month. So it would be 4 weeks in November and then 1 week in December. And that's why this is saying 1 week in December. So it's kind of rolling over. And it would do the same thing down here. So I didn't enter any juvenile caseload, but if I had, then it would also show you the shutoffs if that was applied, and then it would show you the utilization out to the end. So under the, if you have an SPPE or an attorney in the RCP, which is the reduced caseload program, then you will likely have one of these tabs for that attorney or attorneys in your calculator. And what sets this one apart is that it actually will tell you how many, they can only do misdemeanors for the most part, right? Misdemeanors, or if they're under a juvenile contract, they could do some dependency under supervision or juvenile delinquencies, misdemeanors. It tells you exactly how many of those they can take. The contract for SPPE, which this example here is for SPPE, says that an licensed SPPE licensee can only do 0.15 MAC for the first 6 months that they're in the program and 0.25 MAC for the second 6 months. And so this is taking that and calculating based on their FTE, how many cases they could take each month and those transition periods. And applying it here as well. If they're in the RCP, then it contemplates basically 2/3 of the caseload, and this number would be slightly adjusted. Though both of those programs only last a year, and they would show the transition out of those programs. We included minor felony here just to try and capture that people coming out of those programs and the increase to minor felony. If for some reason this is a new addition, hold on. if for some reason somebody did end up qualifying for a major felony, you just reach out to your analyst and we can adjust that and add it in here. This will also calculate, and it will calculate based on that 0.15 if they're SPPE or the 0.25 to say where they're at and roll up those numbers. So really the only difference here is this section up here that kind of just gives you a little cheat sheet, right, of what they can take, how many cases they can take each month. I didn't go over it, but here you have the contract information, and this information mirrors the ROC, right? The only change as we go into each attorney's tab is the attorney's name that you'll see here, and that feeds into that entity roll-up. So for a standard attorney, what you will see is if an attorney is either not contracted for or not qualified to take a case type, then we will gray it out and hash out those months to kind of help identify what case types they can or can't take. I'm finding that some people might not realize they're not qualified for civil commitments or other case types simply because they haven't checked the box on their attorney qualifications that they want to be approved for those. And this might be a good reminder to let people know what their attorneys are qualified for and what they can and can't take. The entry here is fairly simple and straightforward. It's just a single count. So here what it's saying is that I took 3 Measure 11s this month. I took 2 major felonies and 4 misdemeanor cases. And then this here is going to calculate what your mixed MAC calculation is on that case type and calculate it all out. If you had an attorney who changed their MAC at some point. So let's say here I'm a 0.5, I decide to go up to a 1, right, in the month of January. You can just adjust the formula here to be a 1, or if I was 0.75 or any combination, then it will just automatically change what that would be, your prorated MAC. And then you can just drag that out and it'll copy that number formula all the way across the board. You can do the same thing in juvenile. So one of the biggest things that we tried to capture here on the new version of the mixed caseload calculator are some instructions on how to apply some of the terms that are in the contract. Also, I got a lot of questions. I've gotten a lot of questions about different case type codes and what of the categories they would fall under when you are counting them in the individual attorney's numbers. So this here provides a breakdown of the different categories that are on the calculator and what case type codes would fall under those different categories. And this is the same thing, but for juvenile. There's another version of this that is for statewide contracts. So like PCR, habeas, PCR appeals, and so on. And that will be posted to our website too. It hasn't been posted yet, but we do have a version for that. Here this is our attempt to give some guidance on case waiting when a contractor closes a case prior to final judgment. So this language can be found in Exhibit B, Section G. And the guidance is, instead of counting a case as 1, so if I was assigned a case and let's say I was assigned a misdemeanor, I withdrew on day 10, then instead of putting a 1 under misdemeanor, I would put a 0.5. If I withdrew on day 20, then I would put a 0.75 instead of a 1, right? And it gives you that guidance for each of these, and this matches up with what's in the contract as far as what your weight would be.
Hey, Megan.
The best way. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, there's a question in the chat from our previous, and it's asking why DOIS, DPV, other MHC is not on the case type list, and how are they categorized on the contract?
They were missed. I will update our template and I'll get those things added. And I'll look at the chat here to make sure that happens. Okay, so same thing here for juvenile. Now hold on. Oh, the juvenile is included here. The only difference here for juvenile is the parent is really the parent or the oldest child. This needs to be adjusted too, so I guess I'll do that at the same time. And this is the what you would enter. So instead of entering a 1, if you withdrew from a parent case within 6 to 59 days, you would put a 0.5. This is any sibling after, it's a sibling and a sibling group where you would get half weight. So then you would get these, this is what you would enter if you withdrew from a sibling group. So if, for instance, you had a sibling group and you had, let's say there were 3 kids that, and you withdrew on day 7, you would get a 0.5 for the oldest kid, and then you would get a 0.5 for the 2 kids that were the siblings, for a total of a 1, right, for that sibling group if you withdrew within this time range. The second instruction here is for the partial weight for subsequent attorneys. So this is that section of the contract that talks about when an attorney withdraws and the case is reassigned to another attorney in the same firm, how that would be counted. So the original attorney that withdrew, their count would be in, you would look in section 3 here, right, to get what their count would be for their withdrawal. The second attorney, if they withdraw from the case, then this is what you would use to calculate what you should enter for them if they then withdrew from the case later on, right? So they automatically only get a half. So when they get the second attorney within the same firm, right, gets the case, then you would put a 0.5 in for them. But then if they ended up withdrawing, let's say on day, I don't know, 10, then you would put in a 0.25 instead of putting in the 0.5, right? So likely what would happen if I was using this calculator is as soon as I sign a case, I'm going to put a 0.5 in there, right? But then, I don't know, 10 days later, now they are they withdrew. Now you need to remove the 0.5 and put in a 0.25 instead. I guess I want to stress before moving on that this is not a required tool. This tool is here as hopefully to help you all track where your MAC utilization is, right? And give you some instruction on how to apply some of the contract terms to your own numbers. Previously, if you had adjustments like you got an ECC approval or you had a withdrawal and the partial weighting, you would probably reach out to your analyst and we would just tell you what your, prorated MAC was for that month. We're trying to give you some guidance on that now so that you can do your best if you want, right, to try to calculate what that utilization is. We're always behind, right? We're always at least 15 days behind where you were at. So it's hard for us to be the gauge on where you're at with your MAC, or to even provide a tool really to tell you where you're at with that. This is the best we can do as far as providing you with something where you can do your best to kind of monitor. But this is not the agency's official record. This is not our official tool. Our dashboards are what are our official numbers. This is just something for you to help approximate where you're at. Maddie?
Yeah, I just want to go off of that. There was a question in the chat. If you have to withdraw from a misdemeanor after a year, you have to go back and resubmit the report from last year and reduce your 9 to a 1 to a 0.9. So this calculator is completely independent of the caseload reports. Our systems and our logic calculate all of that partial weighting for you just based on when you reported the case as an appointment and then when you reported that case with the disposition code on your report. So there's no need to go back and adjust a caseload report.
Correct. Okay, so if you take a case out of county, then instead of putting a 1, you would put a 2 in them for that case under the correct case type. And then here, this talks about additional case weighting. So these are identified under the contract. This here is just cut and paste from the contract. This is the criminal. Here's our non-PCRP juvenile. A case so basically if you have a case that is delayed for a year or longer pursuant to a bench warrant or dismissed, you can reclaim. So you would just count a new appointment, right, in the month. So if a case comes back because it's been a year, right, on warrant, you would just put a 1 in the month. If a case is retired and then comes back, right, from then you would do a 1. And then if a case returns for a new trial or sentencing on a direct appeal or post-conviction relief, then you would, when you get that case, you would put a 1, right? So I don't know if the turnaround would happen this quick, but let's say you got a case in October and then it closes in December, it goes to PCR, or it goes to appeal, it comes back within this contract cycle and it goes back to the original attorney, there are no conflicts, or even I suppose if it goes to a different attorney, then you, in the month that it comes back, then you would put a 1 in the month that it comes back. So essentially the case could be reported or counted in your calculator twice. Same thing here with juvenile. The only other thing really to go over is the extraordinary case weighting. This is not perfect, okay? But it is the best we are trying to do to give some sort of guidance on how to account for approvals of extraordinary case weight. So if you submit a request for extraordinary case weight and it is approved, you'll receive an email that will say your request for extraordinary case circumstances has been approved and you will have an additional 50 case weight in applied for this case. And then it will also give you a month of when it is effective. So this is basically saying if you got an email that said you get a 50 additional case weights, then you would put a 1 under murder or J law. If you got one that said 6.7, you would put a 1 under measure law 11, and so on and so forth. I'm told that these numbers should be like standard in what you would receive in response. But I would say if you receive something, let's say you get one that says 25, right? 25 case weights, then I would put a 0.5 under a murder or a J law. If you received one that said 30, none of these are 30, I would put 30 under misdemeanor. This isn't a perfect system. It's just a tool for you to try to approximate, right? And get those weights counted for. So that's, I just wanted to give some guidance on how you would use this based on what you receive in those emails. I would think your default would always be misdemeanors. If you could not find the number that is approved under this list, then I would automatically default to misdemeanor, and however many misdemeanors you need to capture, right, and count in order to get to the number that was approved. The last guidance here is just how to adjust if you have an attorney who changes their MAC, but we already went through that. Am I missing anything? I don't know. Alina or Adeline, is there anything here I didn't capture? Does this seem like I got it all? I'm ahead of schedule, so I'm wondering what I did different. Talk faster. Okay, I will make these adjustments to add in those codes that are missing, and as well as just clarifying that this dependency parent is dependency parent as well as oldest sibling in a child case. That's all I got. Stop sharing.
I do have one additional thing, Megan, I wanted to look at this in the chat, the question about the missing case types. So MHC is a case code for a specialty court. The specialty court is not like those type of cases would not be something that you needed to add to the caseload calculator, and why MHC is probably not on that list. Because MAC is not associated with that. It's another body of work. That information should be provided through the contract caseload reporting. But as far as having any impact on an attorney's or contract's utilization, that's a code that wouldn't pertain to that. So, and I'm trying to just think if we touched on whether or not we should be adding, the specialty court is not case numbers for this tool.
Alina is correct. You should not include any, you should not include any specialty court cases in this calculation. those are accounted for. So in the calculator where it has the prorated MAC, so where I was adjusting from that 0.5 divided by 12 to 1 divided by 12 and whatnot, that's where the specialty court is accounted for. So if I was a 1.0 attorney, but a 0.25 of my time was for specialty court, that prorated MAC every month would be a 0.75, even though I'm a 1.0, because it removes the FTE for the specialty court from my expected MAC pickup every month. That's where the specialty court's being accounted for in that line. And that's why you would not include those, because there is no MAC associated with specialty court. It's paying for your time to do that work, not for the specific cases. But that's a great point, Alina. Thank you. Let me read this from Joel. Can you give a tutorial in regards to inter-office transfer of cases? Do we re-report the transfer if we get extra credit? So do we re-report? I think this is a reporting question and not a calculator question. Yes. So if you transferred a case, you would take the original, you would report the original case, and then you would put the date that they withdrew from the case, right? And the code, right? The disposition code of withdrawal. And then you would do a new line with the new attorney, the date that they were assigned, and then depending on what happened with them and their disposition of that case, then you would put that when that case is finally closed for them.
And if you're granted extraordinary case credit, that will automatically be applied kind of behind the scenes within our logic. So you don't have to do anything within your report itself to apply that extra weight.
Right. And I guess for calculator purposes, you would, in this scenario, you would put a point, you would apply the partial weighting for the withdrawal to the attorney who withdrew based on the time that they, whatever, however many days they had the case before they withdrew. If it's an internal, which would be in the case of Joel, then you would put whatever the partial is for them. And then when you're granted ECC, you would just put that in there in whatever month it's granted based on the chart. It wouldn't really apply. It wouldn't be impacted by the fact that it's a subsequent attorney, right? Gina. Gina's saying, to clarify, if we transfer inside a law firm, you still report as a withdrawal, even if we don't file withdrawal with the court. How do you change who the attorney of record is without filing a withdrawal? I guess that would be my question. I would assume you would need to file a withdrawal or a substitution of some sort to notify the court that there's been a change of counsel. I guess my direction would be, and I'm happy to have data pipe in if they feel differently, but even if they don't file withdrawal, I would use the withdrawal code because that is what happened and the date that they withdrew and the case was transferred to the new attorney. There was a point that Alina made in the last session that we did that I think we forgot to touch on, which was best practice is really to keep all of your reports. So when you submit your October report, save your October report and keep it, right? And this may be something that was better or more applicable to newer contracts who aren't familiar with how to do things, but it is recommended that you keep the report for each month. That way, if you need to make changes, you can. So each month should build on each other, right? But it's important to keep a copy in case something happens and you have to resubmit. I think it's good to put that out there that we consider that best practice. Did we get all the other questions?
So there was a question and I cannot answer it. So maybe one of you guys can. And that is in our case type codes, the miscellaneous, or not miscellaneous, the misdemeanor case type code says misdemeanor case is not otherwise specified. And so with that, we've included a comment, or we've asked for them to submit the type of appointment in the case. And so they were asking what other appointment types would that be?
On the case type list under resources, the misdemeanor case type has an asterisk after it. Note says to specify type of appointment in comment field. I think this is a reporting question, is how I'm reading it, because I don't know what resources she's referring to. I'm assuming some sort of reporting resources, and she's asking if we need to specify the type of appointment in the comment field. Comment field is optional, so, but I
Correct.
guess if it has an asterisk saying that, asking them to note in this, to note, to specify the type of appointment, then are we we're that's our guidance, is to put that in the comments field.
Yes.
Okay. There was one question here. I just saw it and I was like, oh, maybe.
Yeah, so Maria had a question. Disposition date entry is optional. With the partial waiting, it is now required. So you've always been required to report dispositions when they occur. It is not a required field necessarily, because when cases are open, you don't have to put anything in those columns. It is required in the sense if you enter a disposition date or a disposition code, then it's going to require you to enter both fields. But yes, you are required to report both the disposition code and a disposition date when a case has reached disposition.
Oh, I did mention in the last office hours that if you have not received a caseload calculator from your analyst and you want one, before just taking the template online and filling it out and figuring it out, I would reach out to your, if I'm your analyst, reach out to me. How about I give you that? Because I have prepared many of these and I just haven't sent them out yet. I'm kind of preparing them all and then going to batch them out. So it's possible I've already prepared one for you. So please reach out to me if you've not received one yet. I think I only have a handful of ones left to do. So it's likely that I've already prepared it. And I don't want anyone to do work that, I mean, there's no point to do work that I've already done for you. Okay, well, look at that. We are ending with less time, like we are less over. We've done a little better.
So with that, everyone, thank you for joining. And if there's any questions in the chat that we did not answer, we will make sure to follow up with that. Again, we will post this recording on our website. The link is in the chat, but it is, if you click on our provider tab, office hours, and stakeholder engagement, it will be posted within a couple of days. As always, if there are additional questions, please reach out to the email listed in the chat, the caseload reporting, and or to your program analyst. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.